Hi everyone, I'm going to get started. So my name is Manon and I'm the manager at Film Hub North. Thank you for joining us today for this new BFI FAN Green Hour session. The Green Hour is an online learning series for film exhibitors focusing on environmental sustainability. This is a nationwide program open to all members of the regional and national film hubs. Please note that closed captions are available throughout the session. So if you need to use them, you can just click on the CC button in the lower right corner of the screen, just next to the Q&A function. The webinar is being recorded, as you may have heard, and it will be made available later on the Bigger Picture YouTube channel. So again, if one of your colleagues up here has not been able to attend today, it will be available again online. Today, we are joined by Rachel Caplan, an environmental film programmer and festival producer, who is also the co-founder of Scotland's first environmental film festival, Montrose LandxSea Film Festival. And we are also joined by Richard Phillips, a climate change and sustainability specialist for the music industry at Julie's Bicycle, a nonprofit working with the creative industries to take bold climate action. Hi everyone. Thank you for joining us. So what we're going to do now is Rachel and Richard are going to speak about their work, give you an overview of what's happening environmental sustainability wise in the sector. It's a bit of a mouthful, and share good practices to make your festival more sustainable. There will be time for questions after the presentation. So just drop your questions in the Q&A function and we'll go through them afterwards. And if you have any other question, tech issue, just want to say hi to people in the group. I will be moderating the chat as well and share links from the presentations if needed. So I'm going to hand it over to Richard first, and he's going to be talking about Vision 25.
Thanks, Manon, and hi, everybody. Just to quickly introduce myself, I'm Richard Phillips, and I work as a climate change specialist for the music sector at Julie's Bicycle. And Julie's Bicycle is a not-for-profit that works with the creative industries tackling the climate emergency across all of the arts and cultural space. My focus is on music, and within that, I work very closely with an organisation called Vision 2025, which is itself a charity, and it's a bit of a sister or partner organisation to Julie's Bicycle, really, and it focuses just on the festival industry. So I'm going to share my slides now. I'm going to take you into everything that Vision 2025 does and all the resources that are available, as well as highlighting a few case studies as well from the Vision 2025 network. So, read my screen. Vision 2025. So yes, my background, as I say, is in the non-film festival world, really, but music and arts events have a clear link, and there are lots of learnings that we can share. So I think what we'll go into with Vision 2025 and some of the detail around the resources, there's definitely a lot of crossover with the worlds that you all inhabit. So Vision 2025, what is Vision 2025? It is a network of outdoor events in the UK working towards sustainability. It was founded in 2010, so it's been around a little while now. And membership is made up of industry associations, which represent as a whole around 1,000 outdoor events. But it also represents event businesses and other stakeholders as well. And here is just a selection of event industry associations that are part of Vision 2025. So on the steering group, there's Julie's Bicycle, which is the kind of organisation that I'm representing. There's also the Association of Independent Festivals, there's Festival Republic, the Association of Festival Organisers, Without Walls, and a few other big players in the UK event space as well. And then we also have a number of industry partners, such as Live Green, Equilibrium, the Events Industry Forum, Green Events, and Earth%, and many others as well. So we're really representing a whole range of different voices within the network. And Vision 2025 is made up of lots of different components, really. So the headline thing really is that there is a pledge, which, as it stands at the minute, is to achieve a 50% reduction in festival-related annual greenhouse gas emissions by 2025. Now that sounds ambitious, and that's because it was. It was sort of a deliberately ambitious target when it was originally established. And I think as time has gone on, as our understanding of sustainability in the event space has improved, we're realizing we need to kind of reconsider that target and look at what is realistic within the event space, while still being in line with climate science. And as the name suggests, Vision 2025, it was all geared towards that pledge to be achieved by 2025. But scarily enough, that's obviously only a few months away now, which is crazy, really. So we'll be revising that pledge and reconsidering the plan going forwards. But currently, we have 100 festivals within the network that have taken that pledge. But Vision 2025 is much broader than that. There is a resource hub which provides the tools, reports, templates, and case studies, which are all really vital for the event sector to be able to meet its decarbonisation goals. And I'll be going through some of those in a couple of slides' time. There's obviously a whole range of resources that we've got on the website, and I've just picked out a couple of them. There's also the Green Suppliers Database, which is a list of sustainable suppliers that can help you with your event and help you to reduce the overall emissions from running your events. And then there's also the whole sort of network engagement side of Vision 2025. So as I said, we've got event industry associations, which represent over 1,000 events which have signed up to Vision 2025, and we're keeping in touch through newsletters, through spaces for communication, for conferences, like the Sustainable Event Summit, which I'll mention in a few slides' time as well, which is upcoming. So just to highlight a few resources that Vision 2025 has been involved with. The first I wanted to highlight is one called Future Festival Tools. And this is a really exciting project which was developed alongside a number of other leaders in sustainable events across Europe. So it's a real sort of co-created set of tools. And what they are is essentially learning materials for event professionals looking to upskill in all aspects of event sustainability. So it's a really great place to start if you're just kind of entering your journey as your festival looks to reduce its emissions and reduce its overall environmental impact. It's a really good place to kind of start and get your bearings and to upskill in those areas. So a quick overview of the tools themselves as part of the Future Festival Tools banner. The first, which is again a really good place to start, is the self-assessment tool. And this helps you to know where you are currently at with your event sustainability. It's essentially a very short survey which looks at different impact areas like energy, waste, water, travel and transport, and just asks you a few things about what you might be doing or might be considering at your event. And it helps to kind of give you some tailored recommendations for where you can go to for next steps. As part of the Future Festival Tools, there's also the Best Practice Guide, which is, as the name suggests, it's a series of case studies, mainly from the world of music festivals, but there's obviously lots that you can learn from it. Again, it's looking at different interventions and initiatives that have taken place across festivals across Europe, looking at different impacts, different environmental impacts, again, along the same themes of energy, waste, water, travel and transport. And there's also an e-learning course which covers various sustainability topics. And it's a great resource, again, to kind of go through at your own speed whenever you have time. It's completely self-guided, and it helps to upskill on different initiatives that your event can be taking. And there's also a trainer's handbook, and that's mainly actually for the leaders and trainers of event professionals. This is more of a kind of an academic resource, because what we're hoping with the Future Festival Tools is that it's going to be embedded into the curriculum for event students. So we're really hoping to embed sustainability throughout the journey of your career within events. The second resource I wanted to spotlight is the Sustainable Materials and Waste Toolkit for festivals. So again, as the name suggests, it kind of does what it says on the tin, that this is a real deep dive into better waste management at events. And this was the result of a really deep research project, which took a year and was funded by the Dixon Foundation, looking into the specific challenges and solutions to the problem of waste at events. There was an understanding that there is simply no standardization at the minute with events, even down to the types of colors and icons that are used on the bins. So all of these systems are not joined up, and it confuses audience members when they're going to different events across the year. And it also confuses waste contractors when they're taking waste away. So we're sort of identifying waste as a really big challenge. And I don't know if you saw in the news just this week that waste energy from incineration of waste is now the UK's dirtiest form of power now that coal has been eradicated. So waste is a big focus for our work in Vision 2025 over the last year or two, and we're expecting this to be a focus going forward. And the result of that project was this toolkit. So the toolkit includes three different things. It includes checklists for event professionals to be able to kind of make sure they're doing the right actions when they're looking at their sustainable waste management processes. So it has a checklist of actions to take. There are also templates, which include things like materials policy templates. So it's kind of a ready-made policy, ready-made checklists that you can use and just have to hand. You don't need to create from scratch. They're already kind of best practice. And then there are tips documents as well, which is sort of more straightforward recommendations and advice giving resources, all part of this one toolkit. And all of these things, these checklists, templates, and tips follow 10 steps from the event inception to the delivery of the event to the post-event wrap-up. So in that sense, these 10 steps are chronological in guiding event professionals in what they need to do on managing waste, and also like what actions need to be taken. And it's also very easy to use as well, given that a lot of these templates are already made and ready to be used by any event. They're all tailorable as well, so you can make them bespoke to your event. Some things might not apply, particularly if we're kind of transferring this from the world of greenfield music festivals to the world of cinema and film festivals. But a lot of the things apply, so it's a really great resource to dive into if you're looking at waste. And then the final thing that I'll mention on the different resources and different projects that we're working on at Vision 2025 before diving into some case studies is a pretty big project called the Green Events Code of Practice, or GCOP for short. And this is a collaborative project between Vision 2025 and Julie's Bicycle. And the idea is to create some minimum environmental standards for events. And this project was born out of an understanding that there are currently no minimum standards on environmental performance at events, in the same way that there might be minimum standards over health and safety, for example. So because there are no minimum environmental standards for events, there are question marks in the sector over what good looks like, what is enough, and what should we be doing on sustainability. So GCOP is designed to be that standardized set of environmental best practice. And what we've been doing as part of this project over the last year has been working with local authorities to see how GCOP as a set of standards can be embedded into local authority frameworks in how they work with events. So what I mean by that is, can minimum environmental standards be tied to things like site permissions and licensing agreements with events, so that all events will have to comply with a certain level of minimum environmental standard? So that's kind of a big project that we're working on now, and we're just in the evaluation phase of that to understand whether or not it works and whether or not we can roll this out nationally. So this will apply to all, at least initially, outdoor events. And then the final thing, a few case studies, is the Sustainable Events Summit, which I mentioned a few slides back. So this is the Vision 2025 annual conference, and it is taking place next week, on Wednesday, 23rd of October at the Newbury Showground as part of the Showman Show. So do take a look if you're interested. There's a QR code there on screen that might work. I hope it's going to work. It might be too small, I don't know. So I'll just give you a second to take your phone out and take a look at that if that's of interest to you. So that's Vision 2025 in as small a nutshell as I can do. I'm going to move on to a few case studies now, which just highlight some of the amazing work that festivals within the Vision network have been doing, which has been, these examples, they've been using some of the resources that are available on Vision 2025, but also going kind of full steam ahead in demonstrating their own leadership in various ways. So the first example I wanted to highlight was Norfolk and Norwich Festival, which is a 17-day multi-arts festival that takes place in May. And I think this festival here has made really great strides on sustainability, and it's demonstrated leadership in its engagement with key stakeholders to make changes and influence behaviours across a number of different impacts. So the festival is hosted in a city centre park in Norwich, and that park is owned by the council. So the festival engaged with Norwich City Council to discuss different ways in which they can improve their sustainability together. And one of the main ways was to be able to get off diesel generators to move to a cleaner energy supply. And in this particular case, it was about connecting to the mains power in order to power the festival to avoid the use of generators. And through the engagement with the council, they were able to gain funding to connect to the grid, which has really significantly reduced its emissions. And it's also put in a request for mains water to the park to be made kind of attached to the mains so that that can be installed. And again, they don't need to bring in things like large water canisters and single-use plastic water bottles. They've also had great success in engaging their audiences. One such way was around the issue of waste. So the festival wanted to reframe the concept of waste to instead kind of refer to things as waste and kind of it being an end of life thing, refer to it instead of as a resource and understand that what we traditionally think as waste can actually have a life beyond its initial use. So one of the ways in which the festival did this was that they gave audiences an interactive experience, joining in with some of the sorting and separation of waste and talking through the different ways in which waste can be not recycled, but also reused. So that helps give audiences exposure to a new way of thinking about waste as resources. It helps to reframe how we traditionally think of as waste. And then a final example, I could go on about Norwich and Norfolk Festival because they've done loads, but another example is with audience travel, in which they've struck up a really great partnership with Greater Anglia in order to subsidise train travel, which is obviously one of the main obstacles for audiences to travel more sustainably to events and festivals is the cost. So this partnership with Greater Anglia to subsidise train travel has had a really positive impact on the ability of its audience members to travel by the train network and reduce the number of cars on the road going to the festival. Keeping on the same theme of travel, I wanted to highlight Stockton International Riverside Festival as well. So this is a good example of a festival tackling emissions from international commissions. So Stockton International Riverside Festival, or SURF, is an annual free outdoor arts and street theatre festival in Stockton-on-Tees in northeast of England. And they wanted to do an international commission that had significantly reduced emissions that are normally associated with international artists traveling. So they kind of set out on this journey and they commissioned Limbic Cinema, which is a Bristol-based multimedia arts organisation, to deliver a significantly reduced environmental impact international commission. And they were able to do so through the project, which was called Within and Without. And it combined sound design from a South Korean music duo called Salamander, and also local dancers as well. So the light projections were done by Limbic Cinema, who are of course Bristol-based, UK-based, but they incorporated sound design from South Korea, and they used dancers who are local to the Northeast. So they successfully achieved this kind of global and local approach to minimise emissions. And at Julie's Bicycle, we used this as a case study, and we compared the emissions of the With and Without project to a similar international piece of a similar scale previously, and the emissions were 65% lower than that previous international commission piece that didn't have that kind of environmental focus and the focus on reducing travel. So it's a really tangible, great example of how emissions can be reduced from travel. I'll probably end on this example here, which is of Cheltenham Festivals, which is a really great example of adaptation. So the couple of slides I've just shared and a couple of case studies I've just shared have all been about decarbonisation, but there is a growing understanding that some environmental impacts from climate change are baked in, and we need to adapt to them, and we need to build in some resilience to those changes which are already happening. So a great example of a festival that has taken strides towards this concept has been Cheltenham Festivals. And they've looked deeply into adaptation measures to environmental risks that are already a reality at the festival. So what they did was they started by analysing weather patterns in Cheltenham during the various events that they've held over many years. And they've identified a pattern of above average temperatures for long durations, lightning storms, and on-site flooding. These are all been growing risks. So what they did in first sort of understanding the risks that were relevant to them was they then went back and looked at their climate strategy, and they started to build resilience into it to build out a 3-year sustainability strategy, which went beyond wet weather plans, which is traditionally kind of what climate adaptation strategies have just looked at. It's just wet weather plans, more from a health and safety point of view. So what Cheltenham Festivals did when they went back to their strategy was they reviewed all their on-site infrastructure for safety and for its durability and ability to withstand extreme weathers. They also created training protocols for extreme weather events. They've worked with partners and other local venues to see areas in which they can collaborate for climate adaptation. And I think really interestingly is that they've integrated climate themes and adaptation themes into the programming of the festivals themselves to foster a greater awareness and action among its audience members. So I'll leave it there. I could definitely go on and talk all day about all of the great work that festivals within the Vision 2025 membership are doing on sustainability, but hopefully that gives you a flavour of some of the things that Vision 2025 can offer as a network and some of the resources that are available to all of you for free online and some of the case studies as well. And I'll hand over now to Rachel Caplan.
You on mute, Rachel. Classic.
That time of day. Thanks, Manon and Film Hub North. It's wonderful to join you and be invited to speak south of the border, joining you today from Edinburgh. I'm going to talk a little bit about running green film festivals. In part, that's about greening of our operations, but really, I think there's a broader context there, which is how do we embed this message of sustainability across everything we do. So we don't, as a festival, we're not providing resource kits, although we're always happy to provide ideas, guidance, advice. But maybe it's more about sharing our approach, our way of thinking, our efforts to inspire audiences to reduce, reuse, recycle, and refuse, which is the fourth R. So I have a little presentation to share. Let me see if we can get this working. Can you see that?
Yes.
Great. Here we go. So, as I said, really, we're going a little bit beyond just green operations today. Starting with this picture here, we are from the Montrose LandxSea Film Festival. A couple of things to note about this picture as a starting point. One is that this is a crew actually coming to the festival in the town here behind by boat. Probably the most sustainable way to get to the festival this year. And they did say by boat on the surveys. And our banner here is completely reusable. It's made by a local company and they just sewed a panel with the 2024 dates across the middle this year. So we hope to use that many, many years to come. So that's just a simple visual to kick us off. So my name's Rachel Caplan. I am, here's me, drowning in waste before I found my Green Film Festival inspiration. I'm now an environmental film festival producer, a curator, and impact producer. I'm focused on using film and media to drive audience engagement, influence behavior, and build momentum for environmental causes. And my work goes beyond just the greening operations, but also delivering this measurable impact through our content, our partners, our outreach. Yes, there we go. Film events to influence audience, drive environmental action. I've led green film festivals in San Francisco, in London for COP26, and in 2023 launched the Montrose LandxSea Film Festival, which is now Scotland's premier environmental film festival event. We launched last year. We explore connections between land and sea, showcasing environmental stories through films, guest speakers, activities. Our focus is really on inspiring audiences to take action and build on their environmental passions. So where is Montrose, you might be asking? Here we are in Scotland. We are this red dot here, halfway between Dundee and Aberdeen. We are a very proud member of Film Hub Scotland. We're the first film festival in our region, Angus region, and we are hosted at the region's only cinema, the Montrose Playhouse, which opened in 2021. It's a community-owned venue. And we're serving both urban and rural audiences who previously have not had easy access to any kind of films, never mind independent films or environmental films and discussions. The cities here, we've got the largest inland water basin in the UK, and beautiful beaches all down the coast. So it's a really spectacular natural setting for our environmental event. So we launched last year. Oh, there's a couple more pictures. That's the town sandwiched between the bay and the sea. Beautiful beaches, which we take advantage of at our events. So here we have a pic of our festival audience. We like to say it's more than movies, it's a movement. We launched last year. We've grown very quickly. The second festival was last month. We showcased 24 new international films, many UK Scottish premieres, had over 30 filmmakers and special guests. We saw a 25% increase in attendance on the first year and had 84% capacity at screenings, which is just incredible. A third of the events were free. We have an eco fair with vendors. We have a coastal erosion summit this year. We had a beach Duke, which is a swim in the North Sea. We had over 100 people take part this year, including all the filmmakers. And as well as the free events, tickets are free for anyone under the age of 18 who wants to come to any film in the festival. So there we go. It's our eco fair, our beach Duke, some very happy and cold filmmakers on a Sunday morning getting in the North Sea. So what we found from our surveys this year is 98% of attendees are saying they're inspired to take action, environmental action after the festival. And this is why I say it's more than movies, it's a movement. People have told us they're committing to many sustainable practices now, such as making more eco-friendly purchases, connecting with our charity community partners, or writing to local government. We've been tracking all these reactions. So this is like really important. I'm going to just talk a little bit about how do we get to this point? How do you inspire people through what we're doing and our efforts to go green, to create that impact, for people to feel inspired to make a difference? We put a lot of work into that, and that's I'll talk a little bit about just now. So how do we convert watching a film to social action? How do we measure that impact? How do we walk the green talk? Is it enough to green our operations, or is it something else? So looking at these mechanisms for action. Of course, everything starts with our film choices. We're a Green Film Festival, so that's an easy starting point. Exploring topics like coastal erosion, climate change, rewilding, energy transition, post-screenings Q&As, which are encouraging deeper engagement and dialogue around sustainability. We're also focusing on films that are challenging the systemic issues of climate, capitalism, white supremacy, patriarchy, spotlighting these stories from marginalized peoples and communities. Personally, women's leadership is really central to this. So little digression, but 56% of our films had a female director this year, and we had many, many, many amazing women on stage. But what we learned very quickly, I've learned that it's not enough just to show the films. You can't just show the films, have the filmmaker there, and then think that, oh, we've changed the world. The film screening is just like act one, and act two is everything that happens in the theatre next. When the lights come up, the credits roll, it's the discussions we have, the participation of environmental partners, the materials we can provide for our audience. So the festival itself is a bridge between the stories on screen and tangible issues and actions in our community. And we call this our Green Connect program. So we're very, using greening, all of our messaging, everything we do at the festival, as well as the curated film program, we're focusing on our Green Connect program. So our screenings feature collaborations with filmmakers and local partners to encourage discussions and direct actions. Here's one of our partners. We had over 30 partners take part at the festival across a range of local and national organizations, businesses, government. They speak, they provide information, tangible actions, they connect audiences to real campaigns and causes around the issues in the film. A spotlight would be our partnership with Angus Climate Hub, which is a leading local organization addressing climate change at the community level. They hosted a coastal erosion summit for us. We had local MPs and scientists take part. And we had this community sourced film project we did, this Storm Angus project, in response to terrible flooding and erosion and storms we had in the region last year. And we screened at the festival world premiere of films that had been made as part of this project. So this was a really, really good partnership with the Climate Hub, and we're going to continue looking at this coastal erosion issue for years to come. So I mentioned there was a first act, screening the film, the second act, everything we do in the theatre, but the third act is really everything that happens once audience members leave the theatre. And that's really hard to track. What are they doing? What are they carrying forward when they go home? What changes are they making to reduce, reuse, recycle? So we have a few efforts to try and involve audiences in that ongoing environmental advocacy and to track that over time. We have a little green pledge. One is people on the right, they're just people writing pledges on boards at the festival. But on the left, we have a way for people to write a pledge on a postcard. And then in 6 months' time, we'll send it to people in the mail as a reminder and ask them how they're doing with their pledge. So that's one thing we're trying this year. We have other ways for people to give testimonials and pledges in surveys, and they can pledge on our website. And we're just trying out these things. Something I've done at another event and we'll do in Montrose in the future is this Green Speak Out. Again, getting people's reactions when they come out of screenings. And there are literally hundreds of these now on Instagram and YouTube. And there are many other things I could talk about as well, ways to track impact, how the festival's helping build those environmental movements, build buy-in for campaigns and causes. It's really hard to do, but I think it's really vital in this thinking around what we're doing. If we are making efforts to green the festival, but how are we communicating that? How are we engaging that? How are we engaging audiences within that? So it's really thinking about how we communicate our sustainability initiatives to the public. So just to get a little bit more nitty gritty, but we obviously are focused on sustaining our operations behind the scenes, as well as forward facing. This is what we like to see at events, is an empty landfill bin. This was from an event I did in the US. So these are some of the things we're doing at the festival. I could talk about any at length if you have questions. Zero waste is obviously using recyclable, biodegradable materials. I'll just quickly show you here. We're very proud this year that our program, this took quite a lot of work, is our printed program is one sheet of paper. Ooh, might be a bit fuzzy. I'll show you when I stop sharing the slideshow. So it's one sheet of paper that folds out like a map. We've got everything in there. It means it's recycled paper. It's really, there's no waste, no glue, no staples, no trimming. It's really lightweight and easy to mail and easy to send out, easy to recycle, easy to fold up and put in your pocket. So these programs have been very popular. And as I said before, we reuse signage, banners. We make sure everything is evergreen, or if it has specific dates on it, that there's a way to recycle and reuse. Carbon offsetting, we prioritized virtual Q&As this year for people that were far away, like Vancouver, Melbourne, California, and that was very popular with audiences. We also have an air travel policy, which I can talk about, because inevitably, you know, people do fly to our event. We encourage active travel. We source locally. Our venue's key, and it's a beautiful community-owned space, but also it's working hard to create to green their operations and make our events eco-friendly. And I put volunteers on there because I think none of this is possible without well-informed staff and volunteer corps at events who are enthusiastic to support greening efforts and assist the vendors and the guests and are knowledgeable and informed. So just to sort of quickly move through a few other ideas, to take each of these, the zero waste, active travel, local sourcing, and trying to incorporate these ideas in visual ways, in active ways throughout our programs for the public. I've got a few just images of ideas from events to share. As I said, it's not a toolkit, but it's about just trying to spark some thoughts for you. So these are from a range of different events, not all Montrose, but here is a sculpture we created with a partner, a surfing organization, from plastic bottles. It's a little hard to see, but it's a big wave, like Hawkside Great Wave. It's got a surfboard. So not only was it a fun community sort of art project, but then it was an amazing photo op that there were hundreds of photos throughout the festival of people in this big wave. That was a fun thing to do. We also, in terms of zero waste in Montrose, we have a repair cafe throughout the festival, and people bring all their electronics and various things, and it's just a very active way to get people involved and a sort of simple thing to do. Active travel, we've had bike rallies before. This was we had actually a few dozen people from San Francisco City Hall to the cinema venue for opening night of the festival, and it was just a fun way to really encourage, in a visual way, show people that people were coming to the festival by bike. And we've had bike valets and things at festival events before. In terms of energy, we've done outdoor screenings. There's a beautiful solar-powered LED screen in the middle of London for outdoor screenings. In Montrose, we had a little solar-powered caravan, this moving image solar-powered caravan, showing short films throughout the festival weekend. Audiences loved it. If you're interested in the caravan for your events, let me know. Back to bicycles and energy. This is an event. We had a bicycle-powered DJ. It was a party, and the only way there was music is if people got on the bikes and cycled. We didn't know if that was going to work, but oh my gosh, there was a queue all night. So super fun. We've also had bike-powered smoothie stations, all kinds of things to get people involved around the issues. Food waste, we work with our cinema to keep all the leftover coffee grounds for a week or two, and all the leftover popcorn, which is perfectly fine, but if they have it at the end of the day, they can't sell it the next day. And we work with a local ice cream shop, and they made, from all the waste, they made an ice cream, and then this was available throughout the festival at events, this food waste ice cream from the cinema food waste, and people absolutely loved it. Something else. Oh, an ice sculpture. So we've had ice sculptures before, which literally melt. So people see films about climate change and they come out and there's puddles of water everywhere. So just sharing some of the weird and wonderful and strange ideas we have. And we're always thinking of new ways. You know, if there are these things, zero waste, energy reduction, active travel, like we might be doing things behind the scenes, but how are we communicating to our audience what we're doing, sharing that and getting them thinking about it as well. So looking ahead, we just know this is the start of a journey for the Festival of Montrose. We're always evolving. We're committed to expanding our reach and deepening our impact in the years ahead. We're expanding partnerships, investing in energy efficient infrastructure, making eco-friendly travel more accessible for attendees. We're focusing on a few key collaborations here, the International Green Film Network, which is an alliance of more than 30 festivals in 25 countries around the world working on environmental issues. And also the Green Arts Initiative, which is something through Creative Carbon Scotland, which is our sister organisation to Julie's Bicycle, north of the border, and working with them. And they have wonderful resources available. If you're not familiar with Green Arts Initiative, please check them out. So as I said, we're more than movies, we're a movement. We encourage everyone to adopt green practices in film exhibitions, everyday life. Think about how you're communicating that to your audiences and join us in making an impact. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to both. It was really interesting. If you don't mind just unsharing, yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, it was really interesting to hear also two quite different perspectives and start with this bigger overview and then also so many really nice examples as well, Rachel. I guess one question that I have is around, have you experienced any pushback, whether either of you, in terms of how the audience respond to taking steps towards environmentability of the festival? You would hope and assume that people all want to engage with it, but I guess there's always people who are a bit less involved in climate issues.
Yeah, I can start that one. Rachel, I can jump in. That's a very interesting question, and in my experience with, I'm obviously not working kind of directly at a festival, but more kind of working at the kind of organizational level of many different festivals. I've never heard that be raised as an issue. In fact, it's quite the opposite, that festivals offer a really amazing opportunity for audiences to try new things. And they can be like a testing bed. People are kind of going with an open mindset, and they're much more willing to try things that they might not otherwise do in their kind of normal everyday life. And a really good example of that is at Shambhala Festival, which is obviously very well known for its sustainability. It's definitely a leader. But they did something I think really interesting around food, in which they decided, I think it was as far back as 2016, that there was just going to be meat and fish free at the festival. And not only did that save a load of emissions from the festival itself, but it also led to this behavior change among its audience, which they were able to actually measure through surveys of their audience members year on year. And they found that I think about 60%, I think it was, of the festival goers would normally eat meat. But 33% of those surveyed 1 year after attending the festival had reported that they had actually reduced their meat and fish intake in their everyday life as a result of attending the festival. So you could say, obviously, the type of audience that might be attracted to a festival like Shambhala would already have that mindset. But actually, they did see in that survey the behavior change amongst those who perhaps weren't already kind of having a plant-based diet. So I think it really is a good example of how audiences can be kind of influenced for that positive behavior change through what a festival decides to do with regards to its sustainability. So I haven't experienced any pushback, going back to your question. It's more the opposite is what I've experienced.
Yeah, I agree. And we make efforts to have meat-free events and et cetera, et cetera. I think it can be really overwhelming for audiences thinking about climate and food and energy and all these hundreds and thousands of issues, and that can make people freeze up. So I think more than pushback, it's about creating different paths and different levels of engagement. Not everyone's going to take the same kind of action or make the same kind of change. For some people, it might just change the conversations they're having with their family. They're not out on the streets, but it's saying to people there are a million places where you can hook on. Just pick the one thing you're passionate about, a little patch of green or something at your local school or whatever it is that you're passionate about. Just pick that one thing and do it. So it's trying to break it down for people, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think there was an Indigo survey around audience desire to actually engage with their cultural space, be it cinema or art venues in general, and kind of like expecting those venues to engage with climate action, to engage with the environment, and that, you know, most people were like really happy to, at least to some degree. So they were like those who were like, yeah, I'm really already engaging with climate action, but those who were just aware and who are really keen to do better. And so it's quite an encouraging thing to hear across the board that people will follow. And Shambhala, we had a cohort of mentees who did work with Shambhala and mentioned the vegan thing, and virtually having no pushback whatsoever, which is great.
Yeah.
I can see there's a few people in the chat who are international festivals, and I guess one of the thing that, you know, we're talking about is maybe like, do you have any insight on like the challenge of, like, obviously international travel is well known as having a negative impact, but at the same time there's this need for international festival to bring international guests and films, because it's about remaining attractive, relevant. It obviously brings a lot of like positive economic impact to a place, but also reputation. So yeah, do you have any like further thoughts on that? Someone mentioned that the Living Cinema Commission example is really interesting, and I guess that's like a perfect example of like mixing international and local. Um, are there any other examples? Do you have any further thoughts on how to like manage that balance?
Yeah, I think it's in the word that you use there. I think it's about balance. It really depends on the size of the festival to how ambitious it wants to be, um, and where the thresholds are, I think, between having local talent that you're putting on and championing versus having kind of bigger global names, if we're talking kind of in the music space, which is kind of where my background is. So it is a balance between the two, and I think there are multiple ways in which you can seek to reduce that impact. I mentioned the example of Stockton International Riverside Festival having that international commission in which they were able to still have that international lens and have that international collaboration, but then also doing it in a really innovative way so that you can have the championing of local talent with the local dancers that they trained up for the performance. Of course, there are different ways to travel as well. So you can encourage artists to either travel by more sustainable means if they're able to come across the train through Europe, for example. That's obviously fantastic. There will always be an element of air travel. And you know, it's about, I mean, at a very simple level, it's about choosing a ticket type which is less impactful than, you know, flying economy rather than business class has a smaller impact. If there needs to be flight travel, offsetting is, you know, there's been a lot of criticism of offsetting. There's kind of good and bad offsetting. Offsetting should never be used just to legitimize air travel. You should still be trying to reduce as much as possible, and there are ways in which you can do that. But I ultimately think it is a balance between championing local talent, encouraging artists to travel through more sustainable means, and also not forgetting that the travel of the artists themselves is actually a smaller proportion of the overall emissions than the audience travel. And there's a whole, you know, there's a whole conversation in itself around audience travel. But it is important to tackle that artist, like the commissioning piece itself, because otherwise you don't have as much legitimacy to be trying to engage your audiences on better travel as well. So it's definitely tricky. And the only other thing I would add to it is maybe the tour that happens after the festival itself. So what kind of is happening to the artist or the art piece, the installation or whatever it is, thinking about how that feeds into like the wider network of the cultural community, and where it goes on to next after your festival can also have a really big impact.
Yeah, I agree. It's about the balance and the thoughtfulness of it. Air travel's obviously responsible for huge amounts of carbon emissions, but at the same time, you know, the challenge is people doing short trips by private jet and not necessarily, you know, balancing that with the benefit of one filmmaker, one guest who's coming, and it makes an impact, as you said, Manon, economically, socially, culturally, environmentally in our region, and also for the filmmaker and the career they publicity exposure we can give them. So I think with audiences, it's also very challenging for us where we're in quite a rural place. People, cars, the way that people get to the venue. So it's about celebrating those people who take alternative means, like the people who came by boat, people who come by bike, people who have traveled by train from really, really far away, and doing maybe little case studies on that, trying to inspire people that it can be done.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking also like rural audiences, I know that the Alhambra in Keswick has organize their film screenings like year round, and especially for the festival around the bus timetables, so that to encourage people when there's like limited bus across the Lake District to so they can actually easily go on time to the venue for the film, which is very simple but actually quite effective. And yeah, we're trying to do a bit of more understanding of audience travel, but obviously there's a bigger conversation around transport. And I think it also come back to what you were saying, Richard, and also with the I have forgotten the name now, the project you were mentioning with Manchester and Bristol authorities around like also like I guess like influencing councils, like advocacy on like a policy making level. And that's
Yeah,
something to
100%.
buy into it, but not others.
Yeah, the Green Events Code of Practice project. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing with audience travel is that there's some things which are easy to do, and there are things which are much more difficult to do. And there's things that are within the control of the festival and things which are outside of the control. And it's about, again, kind of navigating all of that. So some of the more straightforward things you can do is just providing audiences with the information, just tackling that information gap. For certain festivals, like your own, Rachel, as you mentioned, it's in a remote location, it's always going to be difficult. But there are other festivals in which there may very well be good local transport options, active transport options, and routes to the site, and just simply making that information really known to the audience through the information that's obviously available online and on the website, but also through emails and through social media, just almost assuming that there's never enough information that can be shared about good transport routes. It's always going to help, and it can help overcome that barrier. But then, as you say, Rachel, sorry, Manon, about the larger advocacy piece, that there are some areas which aren't well serviced by public transport, particularly rural areas, of course, and there are some really sort of senseless things like timetables not matching up with the wider cultural landscape and the times at which events close. So it's about speaking with the local authorities and making sure that everything possible has been done to kind of eradicate some of those silly things that currently exist that don't match up with what is needed from a festival in order to reduce emissions via better public transport options. So it's about having those conversations and engaging. I really like, Rachel, what you said there about celebrating those who travelled sustainably as well, because a lot of the conversations that can happen about reducing environmental impacts can sometimes feel punitive, and as you say, can sometimes feel overwhelming to audiences. So if we kind of flip that on its head and talk about celebrating the efforts that people have been able to make and the achievements they've been able to do, is also a really great incentivizing mechanism, really.
Definitely, yes, that communication piece, because what I've found is we're in Montrose, which has actually excellent rail networks to direct trains to every city in Scotland and a direct train to London, because the East Coast train to Aberdeen stops there before Aberdeen. So really, you can easily get there from anywhere in the UK, and the venue's very near the station. But people don't know this. So talking to people in Edinburgh and Glasgow, and they're like, oh, how do you get them? Then you tell them it's an hour and a half away on the train, from. So we actually have now on our website the travel section, a list of cities and a list of the train times, because, if you say to people, yes, that's 25 minutes on the train or 45 minutes or an hour and a half, people don't know this necessarily and understand that that's an option. They just think, oh, you're in a remote place. How are we going to get there? So absolutely, whatever you can do to make it easy for people, and keep saying it and keep saying it.
I've got another question that's for you, Richard, about whether there are like specific tools for calculating like festival impact. Because sometimes it's a bit like when you don't even know where is your worst area of impact, like what can you do?
Yeah, there are lots of carbon calculators are out there. So that's kind of for the uninitiated, carbon calculators are online tools which help measure your carbon footprint in different areas, and there are lots out there. Julie's Bicycle has one which has been around for a little while called the Creative Climate Tools. It's gone through some various name changes, so you might have come across it under the guise of a slightly different name, but Creative Climate Tools it help you understand the different areas of your carbon footprint, which you can sort of identify as the priority. So it looks at energy and travel and transport, waste, and I think a few other areas as well, depending on kind of your event type. And you can use that. You just need to get some very basic information, which you can do by speaking to different suppliers and by simple things like reading your energy meters. You pop those numbers into the carbon calculator, and it'll give you your carbon footprint, which basically looks like a pie chart, and you can see where your biggest areas of impacts are. And there's also a qualitative section to it as well, which looks at different actions you might be taking, which is not related necessarily directly to your carbon footprint total, but it just gives you some ideas as to what actions you can take. There are other more specific carbon calculators which are more detailed for specific impact areas. So one that I would highlight is Equilibrium, which is actually about to be, slightly confusingly, about to be rebranded to onboard.earth, sorry. And that looks specifically at audience travel and artist travel. And that's linked up with some reputable ways of compensating for those emissions as well.
Thank you. That's great. On the topic of the artist, there's also that's more like digital practice based, but Abandoned Normal Devices has also like a digital impact tool that I think they did with Julie's Bicycle for like artist practice online and the impacts of that, which was quite interesting, but maybe a bit more niche. We like sharp on time, like 3. So there was just one question that was just about the use of refuse, because you mentioned it, Rachel. What do you mean by refuse? And then I'll let everyone go.
I was on at a talk recently, and someone said this is the new buzz thing. We have the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle, but refuse, which is, I suppose, really reduction, but refusing to do things like refusing to book a flight or have do something that just refusing to do things.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you. Well, thank you both so much. It was really interesting, really loads of really useful examples. So thank you for your time. Thank you for everyone for attending and for your question. And I'm just going to add a couple of things and leave you to it. But we've got the Historic England by BFI FAN carbon literacy training that is still open. So if you're a heritage venue or historic building and you want to take part in a carbon literacy training, it's only £10 to register and take part. And it's not limited to England, although the name Historic England might be confusing. But it's on our website, and also Jolly Bicycle, in partnership with us and BFI, has released a piece of research on what funding is available out there for film exhibitors. So I'm just going to link it up. It's on their Sustainable Screen website, which is full of resources and ideas for exhibitors, archive, festivals, like everyone in the film industry on the exhibition side to have a think about what they can do better. And yeah, we'll be back in touch for another session at some point. Thank you so much, everyone, and take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.